My guests today are Erica Reuter, the Regional Vice President for U.S. Public Sector Solutions Engineers at Snowflake, and Lauren Toth, a Senior Technical Program Director at Peraton. Erica, Lauren, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Today, we're talking about fraud, and the Trump administration came in and made this a central piece to what they're trying to kind of really deal with when it comes to reducing the amount of money being spent across government. They are really focused on, okay, agencies, zero in on fraud, waste, and abuse. How can we be better at it? And today, when we talk about fraud, that seems like a never-ending topic. We've had multiple legislations around improper payments. We've been talking about fraud for a long time. Erica, why is there a bigger focus on fraud today than ever before, outside of the fact that Trump administration has been talking about it?
Certainly. I think fraud has always been a hot topic. It's quite lucrative if you are a criminal, right? Fraud is quite lucrative. And given COVID, given the fact that we have always, as a government, tried to do our best. We've tried to pay people and make them whole and, worry about later whether or not that was a legitimate claim. Fraud became exceptionally popular and bigger than before. And I think there's still state, local, and federal agencies out there who are trying to recover those funds. And that's why it's so exciting to talk today about solutions in that direction and talking about how we're shifting from that pay and chase model to actually using AI and machine learning to prevent and to investigate prior to sending the payments out. And, I know Peraton, Lauren, they've done great work in this area and have some amazing results to share.
Lauren, let me just do a quick follow-up with Erica. The pay and chase model, that's something we've heard time and time again. Agencies have tried to do things to get out of it. Is it just if you will, I'll use the overused term, perfect storm? We have the data, we have the technology, and we have the learnings that we've really been working on over the last 15, 20 years. Is that why maybe this time is better today than ever before to move off that pay and chase model?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do, honestly, with the advancements we've made in large language models and in allowing people who really know the space. They know the data. They're not programmers. They can interrogate the data in a way they never could before. They can really get in there and figure out how to use these systems to prevent that. For years and years, we talked about the back and forth of getting your requirements to programming into IT and then building you something and then coming back and saying, no, actually, I meant this, or it's interpreted that way. This is streamlining that quite a bit. So yes, I do think it is the perfect storm. The technology is where it needs to be now to give, again, those who have such deep subject matter expertise, the ability to really exploit that knowledge and fight a fair fight.
I'll add too, that perfect storm is, while it's a critical tool for us to detect and prevent fraud, it's also an enabler of sophisticated scams. So it's not just the good people, the defenders of our nation's funds that are using these tools to find fraud. Fraudsters are using it as well. They're creating deep fakes and they're creating, fake medical claims, fake x-rays, you name it, and they're using AI to create it. And so it's really important to make sure that we stay on top of technology so that we can keep up with all these emerging fraud schemes.
An excellent point, Lauren. I said a fair fight. It's not a fair fight because, we have to comply with regulations, do things responsibly. They're figuring it out faster, I think. And I don't know, Lauren, you probably see that too. And we're learning from how they're exploiting it to kind of get some techniques in place and put some anomaly detection and rules detection in place to help try to combat that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just goes back to shifting away from that pay and chase model because there's just so much fraud out there that you have to get the money before it goes out the door, because for every dollar that goes out the door to a fraudulent person or entity, it's estimated that it takes $5 to investigate and recoup that money. So it is very expensive to chase down fraudulent funds that have gone out the door.
It sounds a lot to me like very similar to the cybersecurity world when we talk about the fraud world. The attackers just need to be right once. The defenders have to be right every time. The AI is making things more difficult. So, Lauren, tell me how you're helping through Peraton, through Snowflake, through the work you're doing with agencies to make that playing field a little more level? I don't know if we'll ever get to fully level.
Absolutely. So we have a leg up because we have decades of experience fighting fraud. And so AI plays a really critical role in combating fraud because we can analyze anomalies in real time using real-time data streams so that we can get real-time alerts. So moving to those real-time alerts help you prevent money from going out the door. And then when you combine AI with subject matter experts who both know the data, as well as experts who have actually conducted real investigations before, your models become extremely powerful. And this is because they have the context to find the smallest needle in the haystack, which historically has gone undetected by models that don't incorporate that kind of fraud subject matter expertise. So, for example, we do a lot of work with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and we use AI to help investigators by creating what we call a priority score. And this is an AI model that helps investigators prioritize the leads that are generated by our models that are flagging potentially fraudulent providers. So instead of having to look through thousands of new flags, they can home in on the highest priority ones that have the greatest probability of a successful investigative outcome. We've also layered on what we call an actionability score. So we're using AI to tell investigators the likelihood of an investigation being successful, and also a timeliness score that predicts how long the investigation will take. So not only are we using AI to find more needles in the haystack, but we're also using AI to streamline workflows so that investigators can take on more cases because they're not doing all of that mundane work of sorting through data. That AI can help them sort through it.
I remember you sharing these results, and I think I said something like millions, but it's with a B, right? The
Yeah,
recovery funds or
absolutely.
the
Yeah,
stop
we've
payments.
saved, yep, so we've saved CMS over $13 billion in fraudulent payments.
That's a great story because I think what tends to happen is people look at the improper payment rates, look at the history and go, oh, well, CMS is ripe with fraud or this program is really struggling, but things are happening. What's been the big challenge to really get this off the ground? I mean, because again, not CMS is not alone. Every agency probably has similar challenges and could use tools like this uh, to address concerns about potential fraud.
That's a great question. And so when you look at fraud across agencies, fraud is largely similar no matter where it is. So one example is identity theft. Some fraudsters will steal identities to submit a fraudulent medical claim, and other fraudsters steal identities to obtain loans or credit cards under someone else's name. So they're different use cases, but it's the same approach. And so while the actual fraud detection models should be tailored to that specific use case and the data that goes into it, and the investigative workflow for taking down those particular bad guys, the methodology for creating that model and its output can be a repeatable process. And this is really important because it allows us to quickly spin up fraud solutions across other agencies without reinventing the wheel. And so Peraton and Snowflake, we got together, we combined our investigative expertise, our smartest engineers, and we did this. We created that repeatable framework so that now we can take our product, Rapid Fraud Intelligence, and deploy it for any agency to help them find any kind of fraud.
Yeah, I think it's people get intimidated and they think AI and machine learning and data science is going to be, oh, I couldn't possibly. But when it comes down to it, we're talking about anomaly detection. We're talking about rules, simple rules. If you look at medical tests and fraud there, people who have an MRI usually have specific complaints, right? So looking at billing codes and saying like, wait, this test didn't go with that billing code. It's a rule. So people who understand the data and they understand the space are really well equipped to do this. And I think intimidation, at least in the early days, was a big part of that. And I think the other part that's always a challenge, it's not the technology, it's the people, it's the culture, it's understanding it, it's adopting it, it's accepting it. And I think at CMS, I think they did a great job and they're showing amazing results there. And, it's just a proven thing at this point.
And along those lines, in terms of the intimidation factor of AI, there's also a legal factor. So with agencies that are fighting fraud and eventually will bring that fraudster into a courtroom. Previously, we couldn't use AI because it was a black box. Nobody understood how AI picked that person to open an investigation against. And so we couldn't use those models for investigations and flagging providers or other entities. But today we have this explosion of large language models and AI agents to where we can train them to come back and say, hey, this person looks fraudulent and this is why. And you now have that probable cause. So you can explain it to the jury and the case won't be dismissed.
People forget, I think, that piece of it, right? It's one thing to be like, oh, I think they're fraud. Well, why? Well, because the model told me. No, no. Here's the rules, here's the laws, here's the regulations that they actually potentially violated. So I think that's fascinating. I want to go back to Erica, something that came up, the data side of it, right? It's anomaly detection. For years, agencies, organizations, anyone has been able to do this. But the rate of data now and the rate of be able to detect that anomaly, that's what's different again today, right? The AI tools, the ML tools are able to do this faster, better, cheaper. You pick the adjective.
Absolutely. And let's not forget the infrastructure, the GPUs, the scale, the fact that everyone is using this now, it's becoming quite common. So the expense of it is coming down. If we were to envision doing something like this 10 years ago, it would have been astronomical, right? It would be like when you were looking at the computers in the 60s and they took up 4 rooms and people couldn't imagine that being on your phone today. It's the same application of what's going on here. So we can process things faster. Like I said, the large language model is opening up a whole new world of practitioners. Perfect storm to come right back to your opening statement. It really is.
Lauren, let me flip it also back over to you for that same similar question. The fact is, the AI and ML tools have been around for many years. They're not new tools per se. And we know that the next fun part we're going to be talking about over the next several years is agentic AI and whatever comes after agentic AI. But because these are not new tools, what is different now? Is it the people that are different? Is it the understanding, or is it the language models that are bigger? When you worked with CMS, they could have gotten out of the pay, they could have tried to get out of the pay and chase many times, but all of a sudden there's a new technology that allowed them to do it. What is different today from the AI tools and ML tools that maybe wasn't there 5, 10, 20 years ago?
Absolutely. So if you think of this from an investigator perspective who's coming in to rapid fraud intelligence to look at leads that have been generated, it goes back to that black box model, right? AI before, an investigator would be looking at it and they couldn't use it because they didn't know why the AI model chose that particular person or entity as fraudulent. But the difference is now this explosion of LLMs that are now possible because of the backend infrastructure, where now it's cheaper and faster to run these things. That gives them the reasoning behind the flag. And so I think that's the big difference, is it always goes back to that explainable AI.
I would agree. In machine learning, we still talk about bias a lot. We don't talk about bias as much in these cases because of that explainability piece, right? We understand how the models were being trained. We understand how it came to that conclusion. And, we can prototype and we can test and we can make sure that these are just and fair recommendations for a human. We always keep a human in the loop still, even at CMS, even with this solution. We're not prosecuting. The computer isn't prosecuting. I think that's got a lot to do with it too. As you mentioned, the explainability and the fact that it's seen as fair now and unbiased, and it's very easy to articulate, no, this is legitimate. Like, of course, this was flagged. This was why. Like, it's difficult to argue with.
I agree. And technology today allows the investigator to converse with the model. You could never do that before. An ML model would say, this is flagged, this isn't. But today you can ask the LM, why is this person flagged and not that person? And it'll return the data from the back end explaining exactly why.
Lauren, Erica, we've got about a minute left in our discussion today, and I very much enjoyed it. I want to ask you both, from your experiences working with CMS or other clients, what can they do to get started on this? Again, fraud, like very similar to AI, we're not at 0, we're not at 100, we're always in some continuum and things are progressing. But what's 1 or 2 things that you've seen based on the work with your other government clients that they could start applying these capabilities to other programs across government? Lauren, maybe I'll start with you.
Sure. The most important thing to apply a solution to a new fraud use case is understanding the use case. So if you can sit down and articulate the one or several use cases where you're being defrauded or where you think we need to look, that's the first step. And then the second step is making sure you have access to the data required to feed into the model. And that data needs to be clean, it needs to be organized, because with models, it's garbage in, garbage out. So making sure you have a very defined use case and appropriate data feeding into your model, that'll get you what you need.
But real quick, at the same time, don't let the fact your data may not be perfect stop you from trying. This
That's
is
what
where
I
the
was going to say.
pilots. Yeah, go ahead, Erica. Sorry, I stepped on you.
No, not at all. I just wanted to add to that. 100%. And the best way to get started is to get started. As Lauren said, if you understand your use case, if you understand what you want to accomplish, and you know anecdotally there's something there, start a pilot, test it out. Your data does need to be clean, as Lauren said, but the systems help with that now. That's another huge advantage to what's going on. I've never seen pristine data in its raw form. I don't know that that exists. So, don't let that be an intimidating factor. Don't let that be something that stops you. Jump in, do a POC, and let's actually talk about cleaning the data as part of the process, because you're never going to be able to maintain that pristine set if you try to build it.
Just like you've never seen a perfect shot in basketball, a perfect throw in football or baseball, you've never seen perfect data. I very much enjoyed our conversation. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So let me thank my guests. Erica Reuter is the Regional Vice President for U.S. Public Sector Solutions Engineers at Snowflake. Erica, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
And Lauren Toth is a Senior Technical Program Director at Peraton. Lauren, I very much enjoyed it too. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Jason Miller, and you're listening to the Driving Federal Innovation Series, sponsored by Snowflake and Peraton on Federal News Network.